Hello, it's me again. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It is Friday, Venus Day. I missed you guys. How? Hi. Today's today's a little bit of a sensitive one because I want to reflect on some life events of mine that during this fasting period of mine. Or let's start with, I decided to start fasting for a little while. And when they say emotionally it puts you through a ringer because it takes away all the distraction and vices, they were not kidding. Especially yesterday and the day before, I was very, very emotionally raw. To the point I couldn't actually come on live yesterday. It's on the themes of child mishandling. Let's call it that. Child mishandling. And for anyone who's not quite sure what child mishandling is, it's the mishandling of a child's innocence, if you catch my drift. And I've been mishandled as a child. My innocence has been mishandled twice. I've had 2 mishandlers in my life. And yes, my parents were, or shall I say my guardians, were very non-present. And that's what allowed for that space to occur in the first place. My first mishandler was a family member, and my second mishandler was a roommate. Not mine, but my parents' roommate he had left me in the house with. And there's this realization of how much innocence gets stolen, gets mishandled. How it's such a common story to the point that victim blaming is standard. Silence is standard with it due to guilt and fear of not being heard or trusted or believed. There's this almost weird occultic understanding that those victims, well, I went through it and I survived, so you can too. Oh well, it's a part of life. Expect it and move on. And it's sickening. It is actually sickening. Now, I have a Gemini moon, meaning that no matter how it is, I'm always going to see more than one side to it. Gemini is the zodiac sign for twins. And the thing we'll understand about twins is they are mirror reflections, but they are still 2 opposite projections of each other, right? So I'm my own devil's advocate as well as my own angel. I'm always going to understand not just only how it was for me, but how it became about for other people too. And I've had to learn to also balance that within myself, where I don't become my own victim blamer. Now, with my life, I've realized, and I've heard stories from my mother, my aunties, my grandmother, about the mishandling of their own innocence and the irony behind it being so, and even female friends and male friends too, this mishandling of innocence as a child. And the irony in it is when they grow up and are now put in the position of their parents who were inactive, who were absent for that mishandling to happen, they find themselves mimicking their parents and being inactive and non-present themselves. Which is fucked up in itself, excuse my language. And I remember sitting with myself yesterday and the day before and really processing how a victim, how someone who was mishandled before almost expects that to just be a part of childhood experiences. And while they may consciously say and consciously want it to not be a repetitive pattern, because I don't think anyone wakes up and wants the worst for anyone, really. And I don't think anyone goes out of their way to be venomous, because they don't even go out their ways to be angels, right? I think people on a middle line basis is very neutral. And this inability to choose is a choice in itself. Meaning the choices that come with that, they just accept it because they didn't choose anyway. But also the fact that there are some, and there really are some, who thrive in that dysfunctional narrative, therefore create it for themselves. And that blows my mind. There are people who have chosen nothing, so that's what came to them. And then there's those who have seen the signs or created scenarios which could only lead to that outcome. And the discernment between the two really churned my stomach yesterday. I'm quite a chilled person. There's not much that gets under my skin, really. And that may be a traumatic response within myself to just be numb. But I felt pure rage yesterday in this processing of the fact that, especially in my life, there was a lot that could have been avoided. A lot. And it wasn't not avoided simply because nothing was said or nothing was seen. It was avoided because it was exactly seen, exactly heard, and chose to be misunderstood. My first mishandler came into my life around 8, 9. And like most, we all develop at different rates. I was an early bloomer in that sense. My body changed in the first batch of people. And then you have the late bloomers, right? You get what I mean? So while my adolescence mind was coming to grips around this new phase of life that I had never experienced before, it came with attention in ways that I've never experienced before. And it was met with not only unwanted attention in that way, it was also met with envy. And, wow, look at you. It's crazy work. I don't know what it was. I was listening to a webinar, and a woman, she said this that really stuck out to me. At first, it didn't make sense, but it's slowly starting to make sense to me now. She says the worst excuse you can have is a good reason. The worst excuse you can have in life for not getting something done is a good reason. And at first I thought, what the hell does that mean? And now looking back, like I said, I was 8 when I started blooming. My mum took me for my first sizing. And I turned out to have a size bigger than how she was at that time currently. And it's a story my mum still tells to now, how, I took my daughter for her first sizing and came out and she had bigger boobs than I did. So I went and got a boob job, right? My mum, it's a running joke of hers, which honestly till today I don't understand what is so funny about it. But I understand that was her envy. She had a child who in many ways was not like her, wasn't the way she expected me to be. And that rubbed her up the wrong way. I didn't grow to be in her expectation. And that made her mad. Consciously or subconsciously, it touched her ego. Until today, she won't accept that. She won't put her hands up and say, do you know what, yeah, as a woman, as a human being, it touched me. She won't. Because mothers are expected to never be envious of their daughters or find them in competition in any way. That's socially just crazy, right? And if a daughter was to point that out, she's just being bratty, spoilt, and overdramatic. And a liar. These are titles I've known a lot in my life. My mother's mother died of cancer. And it was during that age of 8, 9 that we were kind of uprooted and she had to go attend to her mum in her final days. And this is what I mean by the worst excuses are a good reason. My mother's inability to be present for me, her children, and her grieving siblings, right? Because she has 2 younger brothers who were living with her mother at that time. Teenagers compared to us. We were still kids, they were teenagers. But she's only one person, right? She can only be in one place at one time. And this was put on her very last minute. Very, very last minute. Like, I'm talking, there's only about a week left of her life anyway. So we're now informing you. It was not at the beginning. It was really at the end. And she was scrambling to get ish done. We are only calling you because we need your signature to go through the funeral processes type of behavior. Good reasoning. Good reasoning for her absence. Good reasoning for her chaotic state of mind. But that made her an inactive, absent parent, which allowed my mishandler to be present. To the point, the only way I got away from my mishandler was to be mishandled so badly by even my mother, misbelieved so badly by everyone that the police had to physically remove me from the house. It was hellish for me to say, hey, I'm being mishandled and told it's because I'm bad, I'm being punished this way. It's because I'm me. I deserve to be mishandled in this way. And anytime I tried to speak up about it and say, hey, I'm being punished and I don't think this is the right way to be punished, it was, well, I've left my sibling in charge. And if he says you were acting up, then you were acting up. So therefore, any way he decides is acceptable. And the fact that you want to complain about somebody disciplining you is going to get you more discipline. Now, the crazy thing is that we can put the buffer of, I was a child, I didn't know how to label mishandling as mishandling at that point. So I simply called it punishment, and the fact that I knew that this punishment did not feel right. I'm being punished, Mum, but it's not right. So we can say, okay, uses of words is why it was never understood for the mishandling it was, correct? Okay, let's fast forward. I'm 18. That's not, my second mishandling happened when I was transferred to the other parent, by the way. But now I'm 18 and I've been transferred back. At this point, my body has physically given up on me. I have lost the ability to walk. I'm learning how to walk with crutches again. It's taken me 2 years to get back on my feet. It's called neurological functional disorder due to trauma. My brain has had to survive so hard that it is functionally dysfunctional enough to break down my body physically. That says a lot in itself. And it's typically found in people who's had to endure way too much, way too early. Well, we go back. Now at this point, the mishandler is gone. He's with another family member, so I don't have to see him anymore. Especially in that state, which, thank heavens, right? But 18, be it an argument, whatever, I pull up the mishandling back up again and say, hey, you want to say all this and that, but when I was this age, I was mishandled. I told you and you didn't believe me. And when I used the actual word of mishandling, I was told I was lying. I wasn't believed. Even though I went way up to that point for me to even feel brave enough to go, hey, this has happened to me, was because my mother had expressed about how when she was younger, around 5-ish, she was mishandled and her innocence was misused. And looking at the logistics of the age of her father and her mother when they had her, technically she was being misused as well. It wasn't a uncommonality. It's not something she hadn't seen or experienced herself. But what was so crazy was when her daughter said, yo, I've been mishandled. And this was when it was. And this was who it was by. I was told I was lying. I was told I was being dramatic and I shouldn't slander people like that. And that this was the same behavior I did in order for me to be taken away by the police. My dramatism. Then 2 years later, when my brother turned 18 too, he spoke up about being mishandled by the same person. In pretty much the same way. And that was when the belief truly started sitting in for my mom. Oh. And then it came out that it wasn't just my brother, it was also our cousin who came over at a time that it was summer holidays, 6 weeks holidays or whatever, and was mishandled too by the same person. All in the same summer. Now, did I feel guilty that I wasn't the shield? If I was still there, I would have been the shield so they wouldn't have been mishandled. Absolutely. Survival guilt. But then again, I also understand that I was a child and it wasn't my job to protect any of those children. It was the adults. That's when she kind of was like, oh, okay, well, what are we going to do about it now? Because that was years back, right? Her solution was to put me and my brother in the same room as our mishandler and her family members, who honestly had never been an active part of our lives in any sense of the word, who actually have raised that mishandler. And do what? I don't know, judge? Sit us in the middle and have us say exactly what that mishandler did to us to his face in front of everyone. That was her solution. Either that or just forget it and just make sure we don't meet up, because there ain't nothing else that she can do about it. She's still heartbroken at the fact that the mishandler was someone so close to her, and she had had a hand in raising, and she couldn't fathom it. She was still more the biggest victim. And it made me realize that this story is so much more common than it needs to be. Where that justice is, hey, if you want justice, sit there in the face of your mishandler and say, hey, you did this to me. And everyone will go, most likely, oh, this is so unbelievable. I can't believe it. The end. And if you do manage to be blessed enough to take it legally, they get sent away for what? Months, years? And then they can still come back. Especially if you're no longer considered a minor. They can still sit in the exact same room as you and nobody will say shite. And that's the justice for having your innocence mishandled. And I felt so much rage at that understanding. Because it isn't fair. There isn't enough shame towards the mishandler. But there is so much put on the person who was mishandled. The imbalance. I just came on to share that. Despite that being a way too common story, I understand that there are means and ways to make sure I might not be able to prevent it, but there are ways to make sure that the person who was mishandled gets one type of reassurance and know that there are people in her corner, his corner, but also a way to truly heal from it, because you're left in the wind. You're left to figure it out on its own. I should have had spaces of counseling where I could have processed those emotions. I should have had spaces where I didn't have to hate my own image. I should have had a mother who believed me the first time, especially because it's a history that she knows the feeling of. But instead, she was too wrapped up in her own self-loathing, self-guilt, and honestly envy. Like I said, that unspoken culture of, well, I went through it and I survived, so you'll be okay. Now, I know for most people, only being mishandled once is a living grace. And then there are unlucky few who, like me and many, many in between, were mishandled more than once by more than one mishandler, because it was pretty much the same setup, different face and different space. Especially when you felt like you escaped one only to walk into the arms of another, it can send you over. And no, it is not okay. And while my mother had the excuse of her mother's death and legal proceedings of her funerals, it was the worst excuse for me. because she was that much distracted from the development of her kids. She was that focused on a dying adult over the living well-being of the children she chose to bring into this world. And it had to make me review the way I truly handle my adulthood and my parenthood. It's not that, hey, their bad things ain't going to ever happen and I'm not going to be able to catch it all. Very, very true. But the way I deal with those situations, the way I deal with those bads will never be in the same way. It's not going to be ignored. Because even if it is unfortunate that this history continues and another mishandler pops up in life, right? And it affects my children. I might not have been there to prevent it, but I'm sure as hell going to find ways to heal it. You're not going to go around with this burden the way I had to. I am one human, but I will never allow my good reasoning to be the worst excuse for my children's trauma. Fine, I was in a different place from you, and it was for a good reason, and something happened. Okay. But the way I rectify that, the way I readjust that, my inability, take accountability for the fact that yes, if I was present, that was less likely to happen. Because there are some who had been mishandled and their parent was literally downstairs. So yeah, it happens even in your face. We're not spirit, we're not God, we're not only omnipotent, but we're everywhere at once. I put hands up to that. But there is no way in hell my child comes up to me and says I've been mishandled and I'm going to call them a liar. Even if, because we do have those who cry wolf, don't get it twisted. Even if it really wasn't that, I'm going to take it serious. I'm going to find out the facts. I'm going to now be very present on it. Because those emotions they're not okay to carry around. The mishandled should never feel like they're the ones responsible. And there needs to be more shame on those who are mishandling. It's too common in a culture. I'm not sorry, but I'm glad that we've had a conversation today, while heavy, very truthful, on a Venus day that is about self-love and just love and softness in itself. And I think we forget something about love is that it can be quite fierce, like a mama bear protecting its cubs, right? Or a daddy wolf. Love does not have to always be meek. Love sometimes is a fire. It sometimes seems like a rage. But it isn't really rage. It is just a standard of no. It's unacceptable. And that is that. I hope I haven't triggered too many people today. But do understand that in that story, that narrative, you were the victim. You shouldn't carry that burden. And if you were a lucky few that had, when you spoke out, people believe you, then thank you for being one of the options in this world that gives hope to truth being revealed for what it is. And if you were one of the few that were unfortunate enough to not have that justice given to you, understand that you do still deserve that. No matter how long it's passed, you were never in the wrong. It was never you. And I'm sorry. I sympathize. I empathize. And know that you are better. And no, nothing was ever taken from you. You, at your core, is still very much you. And there was never anything wrong with that. And they were wrong for trying to demonize such an angelic light in you. Anyways, I have to get on with my day. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I hope this opens the minds of not only those who've been on this side of the fence, but the ones on the opposite side, to understand that yes, these stories are very much real. Yes, they are way too common, and no, there is more that can be done about it. There's more that should be done about it. And us sitting with ourselves and truly allowing our good reasonings to never be the worst excuse is a big leap towards that change. Okay. It was a pleasure speaking to you. See you tomorrow. Bye.